Marina Vantara. Mission Homo Liberatus, The Beginning. Chapter 8. Energy Vampires and Where to Find Them. So, do you believe us now? Are you ready to listen? What exactly is your mission? Captain Pilatov asked instead of answering. His tone carried no trace of sarcasm this time. Energy vampires and saving Earth's nature from them, I replied. You defend your borders from Americans, Germans, Japanese, practically from the whole world, but beyond those borders are people just like you. In theory, Andrei noted doubtfully. He had never been outside his country. And in practice too, I countered. Vampires are the real enemies, on both sides of the border. Vampires steal and hoard energy, instead of exchanging and generating it themselves as nature intended. They disrupt the balance. They drain resources meant to be shared equally among all living beings on the planet, not just the selected few. I returned to Earth to find a way to protect humanity and nature from these parasites. What your imagination conjures up are merely characters from folklore, I hurried to explain. The existence of vampires isn't a secret to Homo sapiens, as it's impossible to ignore the sense of moral emptiness and physical exhaustion after interacting with them. However, very few people can perceive the movement of subtle matter, so you need visual representations to make sense of such phenomena. To embrace the concept of energy, people associate it with blood. And frankly, that's not far from the truth, because when energy is lacking, vital functions weaken, blood production and circulation slow down, and there is less of it indeed. But there are animals that feed on blood, Andrei objected. That's true, but humans aren't among them. So, are vampires humans? And aren't they immortal? The captain's genuine surprise and ignorance amused me. Of course they're humans, and they're definitely not immortal. I replied with a laugh. We believe energy vampirism starts as a bad habit, but it drives its host down a path that ends in degeneration. Vampires will lead humanity, along with themselves, into an evolutionary dead end unless someone stops them. Homo sapiens civilization doesn't exactly encourage inner harmony, which is usually what vampires destroy. The imbalance in turn drains people's energy, while parasites feed on it. They benefit from your anxiety and prompt it at every opportunity. Are you going to tell me vampires created civilization too? The captain challenged. I doubt they created it, I replied calmly. Vampires are parasites and create very little, but they're extremely skilled at making civilization work for them. That is, through the deception and manipulation of your consciousness. Anyway, a reflective block isn't hard to create. What truly matters is learning to recognize the moment someone forces you to lose or give up biopsychic energy. Vampires, on the other hand, whether consciously or not, draw others' energy but either don't give it back at all or give back less than they took. Unlike a natural exchange, the energy they hoard doesn't return to circulation, meaning nature is left with less and less over time as it becomes depleted gradually. But how can energy be preserved? He asked. Oh, Homo sapiens have invented plenty of ways. I responded. And vampires are downright obsessed with hoarding any kind of resources that can somehow be transformed into energy. Food supplies, fuel reserves, money. Money? The captain perked up. Now that's something I'd like to hear more about. Especially money. Food spoils. Fuel is dangerous. Emotions are unstable and unpredictable. But money preserves energy for a long time. It's the deepest trap humanity has ever set for itself. Just think, what is your money? I still remember the definition from my university days. Andrei laughed, clearly anticipating his favorite pastime, philosophizing. Money is first a measure of value and second, a medium of exchange. A measure and exchange of what? Well, everything: goods, services, resources. Exactly. And to create or extract the things for which money is paid requires someone's life energy, doesn't it? By paying for something with symbols of energy, money, you compensate for part of the life given up by others to meet your needs and desires. The division of labor is indeed a form of energy exchange, I said. However, to maintain nature's balance, anyone who gives something for the benefit of others must receive just as much in return, whether from one or several sources. In Homo sapiens terms, your monetary symbols should be able to buy enough resources to replenish the energy and justify the amount of time in your life that you spend working. Otherwise, someone else is pocketing that energy, which by extension is the worker's very life. And time, which is life, can't be reclaimed. Humans are constantly vulnerable to this imbalance because you can't measure your real biophysical energy costs, and you barely understand them altogether. The exchange of energy is sabotaged by vampires everywhere, on both sides of the border. The incomplete refill of biopsychic energy drains human beings. Then, they either find a way to recover at someone else's expense, or they don't live very long. And it doesn't matter what the social system is, or what you call it. Are you saying that low wages for long hours of hard work directly shorten a person's life? Andre asked. Isn't it obvious? I replied, yeah, that makes sense. What you're saying isn't new. We just aren't used to drawing parallels between stealing someone's life energy and accumulating capital. When you think about it, it's obvious. Whether the capital is private or state-owned, workers never fully get back what they put in. Notice how, for Homo sapiens, this is a legally sanctioned way of appropriating the lives of their kind. And if you can't prove the money was stolen, no one cares where someone's wealth came from, whether they preserved their own energy or someone else's. It doesn't even matter from the perspective of natural balance, because hoarding energy is a violation in any case. It is a theft from nature. So what does that mean? Our whole life? Yes, the entire Homo sapiens civilization, ever since the collapse of tribal society, and maybe even earlier, has been built on violating nature's laws. But why? Andre asked, bewildered. That's the key question, I exclaimed, finally getting to the point. It's all done out of fear that tomorrow won't bring the same resources as today. Fear of hunger and death, essentially. But isn't that natural? It's natural to fight a real threat, not an imaginary one. How do you think other species survive? Almost all living things on Earth feel fear, but aside from humans, very few creatures make large reserves. Bees, perhaps, but even they are exploited by Homo sapiens. Yeah. I can't even imagine humanity without stockpiles, Andre said ironically. His mind was working at an unusual speed, and questions sprouted like mushrooms. I would answer one and two more would pop up. What if, say, inflation is high in a country and money loses its value? Does that mean energy also devalues? I rolled my eyes. I had to explain the obvious again. Energy can't devalue, because it's a phenomenon of nature. Inflation only changes the terms of compensation for a person's energy spending. Do you see? Andre just shook his head in uncertainty. Money doesn't lose value on its own, does it? I said. Someone triggers that process. Homo liberatus had long observed financial phenomena, which had turned into a science shortly before we migrated to New Lemuria. We were concerned, realizing that the growing dominance of finance in human civilization meant nothing less than the growing power of vampires on Earth. Inflation is just a trick to separate energy from its symbol, and then recreate that connection with a different quantitative value. Essentially, it is created to seize naive savers' efforts and time, that is, life, by deceiving them. Imagine you've worked for years, giving your energy and time to your employer, and you had not been spending all your earnings right away because you wanted to save money and buy a house in the future. Then suddenly, inflation strikes and your dream home turns into just a pair of boots. That's all you can afford now because someone cleverly shifted the relationship between your energy and its symbol. So, where did your energy go? considering that nothing in nature disappears without a trace. People are led to believe their money disappears forever, while they're simply forced to give up their claim to the natural restoration of their energy in favor of the vampires who cause inflation and profit from it. The scheme is both complex and brilliant. It allows vampires to steal the energy invested in labor by all Homo sapiens at once because inflation equally devalues all savings stored in both bank accounts and pickle jars. The genius of vampires is nature's greatest curse. Your eternal desire to save energy, which is simply laziness, has created such a cumbersome economic machine that an average Homo sapien has long stopped understanding where the system begins and ends, what benefits him, and what works solely to rob and enslave him. You live blindly. And vampires grow bolder the more their schemes go unchallenged. What usually follows a spike in inflation? A war, the captain, well versed in history, blurted out. Exactly. War. That means even more human suffering, and more energy for vampires, whose favorite delicacy is the pain and fear of others. No one else but these parasites provoke and lead all the wars on Earth, especially the prolonged ones, which do not end until the vampires have depleted the resources of all warring parties. And then they just stop the war, pretending to have reached some agreement, only to wait until a new reserve of energy builds up and drain it again later. André was suddenly struck with an insight. So, normal people won't be able to live better or more peacefully as long as vampires rule the earth. Do you understand now?